50 years ago, this was the day I first heard the sound of war. It was a war that shaped my life and forged my later desire to understand the depths of Palestinian suffering, but not only that, Jewish suffering too, the latter spanning over 2 millennia and which culminated in that colossal crime, the Holocaust. I grew up not far from the massive Palestinian refugee camp in Al-Baqa. I worked across the street from the Al-Wahdat refugee camp. In the past 30 years, I have been to Auschwitz-Birkenau, visited Dachau, seen Buchenwald. I have studied in depth the trials at Nuremberg and elsewhere. Some will respond, mechanically almost, that the experiences of the two peoples are not equivalent. How could I mention them in one breath? Indeed, I agree. The Holocaust was so monstrous and so mathematically planned and executed, it has no parallel, no modern equal. Yet it is also undeniable that today the Palestinian people mark a half-century of deep suffering under an occupation imposed by military force.
My country would like to thank the High Commissioner for the updated report. With respect to the conditions that were experienced by Jews throughout their history depicted in the report, we must establish a link with what the Palestinians are experiencing today due to the atrocious crimes committed by Israel.
UN Watch.
Mr. Chair, in this hall an analogy was made yesterday, a comparison was drawn, and a word was evoked. High Commissioner, you asked, how could you mention Palestinian refugee camps and Auschwitz, the Palestinian situation and the Holocaust in one breath? The Holocaust has no equal, you noted. And yet, you went on to say, and yet, you did make the analogy between Israel and absolute evil. You did draw the comparison with the Holocaust. You did evoke the word. High Commissioner, you could have compared the Arab-Israel conflict with any one of hundreds of other conflicts around the world, and yet you chose to evoke the symbol in world history of absolute evil. Not surprisingly, your analogy just echoed now by Qatar, the funder of Hamas, the terrorist group whose atrocities you failed to mention once in your statement. Finally, you evoked your personal memories in Jordan from the 1967 war, and yet you did not mention that the government of Jordan, whom you later represented, placed its army under Egyptian command in June 1967, while its state-controlled radio openly called for Israel's death and annihilation, quote unquote. Why did you also fail to mention that, despite assurances from Israel that it had no intention of fighting with Jordan, that it was King Hussein from your government who attacked, launching artillery barrages and airstrikes on military and civil targets in Tel Aviv, Netanya, and Jerusalem?